How's it going?
Good. It's just
Episode
rainy
10.
and cold over here. Yeah, it's episode 10. I can't believe we've already hit 10.
I know.
Seems like no time.
Time flies when you're having fun. All right. I'm going to ask you a question. It's my turn today.
Great.
When's the time when you weren't able to see a win while it was happening?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to think about that. Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, I think it would actually be the healing, probably the most prominent one, was the healing of the brain condition that I had. Selling my first company did not seem like a win at the time. Like we were getting ready to launch our second location, and I was really pissed. Like I could not believe that I had worked so hard to build what I had built, and I had to like sell it and give it all up. And I could not. I was miserable. I didn't hate that company. I hated the day-to-day of that company. Like dealing with crying kids. My kids are teenagers. They don't cry very often anymore. So at the time, like I didn't realize how burnt out I was and how over dealing with the city and the government and all of the ordinances and Qualistar and all of the things that go with the child care center. I just like was so committed, which I think part of that's really good. I was so committed on my why that I just didn't realize how over the business I was. And I probably, if that wouldn't have happened, if I wouldn't have got sick, I probably would have never sold it. It was my dream. Like I had a very clear vision and it was not bad still going today. Very profitable, very successful, but I'd enjoy what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And it was literally killing me. Like that was a huge part of why I was so sick, is because my body was just shutting down and I was grinding and opening a second location. But fast forward, the win in that is I wouldn't be here and I love what I do now. And even though shit gets tough, and I am very clear on my why for this as well, and part of it came from that story, I don't know I would have ever stepped outside of it. And I've had the opportunity to do so many things and bigger things and make a bigger impact where I don't think I would have ever stepped out of just like the owner operator mindset at the level I have because I sold that. So it was a huge win. Also, I made a lot of money when I sold it, which led to the ability to have capital to heal, because my healing cost me over $130,000. Paid off our house. Like there was so much good that came from that. And in the moment, I was like, my life is over. My purpose is over. It was so sunken under so much victimhood and sadness. I was dying, to my defense. Like I thought I wasn't going to live. So, there was like a very hard thing that I was overcoming. But I think the reality is it was the best and worst season of my life. It was the worst season of my life that led to the biggest win. Because I know what true healing looks like. I know what's possible. I'm way healthier now than I ever was. There's so many wins in that. And I was so blind. So great question, Taylor. That's fine.
See, I can do it. Yeah, it's hard to see the forest for the trees, right? And I think that's what we're going to talk about today is, how do you find the wins when you're just over it, and that happens. I think that's something that's important to talk about, and even in the 10 episodes that we've done, or the 9 previous episodes, we've talked about, things like celebrating the small wins and how to identify those and how to stay in the process and stay connected to it, and how to be present in that, and that is good. And and we stand behind that. But the very real fact of the matter is that you just have shit days and shit weeks. And, you can say all these things and you can, I mean, I'll speak for myself. Like, you can celebrate the small wins one day and wake up the next day and for no apparent reason, not feel like any of that matters and not be able to see the wins and not, I think that's just a very real, part of that's like the human condition. Part of that's when you're trying to do hard things, when you're trying to move the needle, when you're trying to, clear a path that doesn't exist, there's going to be the inevitable tough times. And so I want to talk today about how to stay focused or how to find those wins when, you just have those times you're like, oh, I'm over it. Like, this is crap. And I think just recognizing that, and giving people the license to feel that way is important too. Because that is one of the things that you and I are both very committed to is, well, I think that there is an unlimited amount of amazing things that happen to us on a given day. And I think there's a lot to celebrate, that it is also okay to have a bad day. And I don't want to be one of those like talking heads that just talks about how, like, no matter what happens to you, just push through and discipline is all that matters. And you show, like, no, like, some days it's hard and you have crap days, and that's okay. It doesn't overshadow or doesn't negate the other days that were good. Those things just exist in concert. It's a spectrum. So when we're over it, when we inevitably have those days, what gets us on track? How do we handle those time periods, knowing that they'll pass, but also recognizing that it's a very real feeling, and not every day is sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, I think that I first want to address like toxic positivity before we go into this, because I think a lot of times affirmations are focusing on the positive, where when we're over it, it just feels awful. And like, we work with, I would say that like our clients are realists. Like there is a very real amount of coaches that like really love doing the like inner work and the intuitive stuff. And like, I love it. I'm all about it. Also, I think that the tactical is really where like bringing that work into the tactical is really where we shine, because we're not the like, oh, how do you feel today? Like, that's just not our voice. Mine a little bit, as like fluffy as I am compared to you, I'm still not fluffy. I get a little fluffy here and there, but like in the big scheme of all of the coaching and any inner work, I am not that fluffy, even though you make me feel like
only because you're beside me do you look a little fluffy.
No, I am not that fluffy in the big scheme of inner work. But I think that like toxic positivity is something that like I really do not like. And I think that we have to acknowledge the difference between toxic positivity and shifting our mindset. I'm going to talk about pee again. I like to talk about pee. That's my new thing. You're going to be so excited.
Is this the theme now? What do you...
I don't know. I heard this the other day. I was listening to a podcast, actually. Joe Rogan. I really
can't have this be the recurring theme of our.
It's so off brand for me. I'm like, stop talking about gross things. Also, okay. So if you put, this is my version of my analogy of toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is, if you put sugar in a glass of pee, it would still be pee. It wouldn't really make it any different. It would still have the same, just might taste a little sweeter. It'd be sweet pea and it's still pee. At the end of the day, still pee. No, you're loving this. This is exactly what's going to get clipped.
Christine's now going to have her own podcast called Sweet Pea.
Oh my God. I can't.
I'm not going to be
Sorry,
a
guys.
part of it.
I know you're going to be out, and you're the guy. But if we actually filtered that pee and like, or you just pour a glass of clean water and you actually get clear on what you actually want, because nobody wants to drink pee, let's be honest. If you just decide to like go, okay, this pee is pee, you can't get away from that. It's there. There it is. That's just what it is. If we put sugar in it, it doesn't change it. It's still gross. We can go pour a new glass of water, or we could filter it, because there are actual things that could filter all the gross stuff out of pee. Then all of a sudden, we like have a glass of clean water, right? Like we have a glass of something. We just have to choose something else. It's not making the pee better. That is not the goal, is to make the pee better. We would actually have to either get rid of all the shit that's in that makes it gross, or we'd have to just choose something else, which I would prefer, because filtered pee is still gross in my opinion. So that is my definition, or my analogy of toxic positivity, is that with affirmations, we're just like trying to add sugar into pee and make it better. The reality is it's never going to be better. So you just have to choose something different. And a lot of times you still don't look at pee and go, the opposite of pee is water. It's not. It actually isn't. It could have came from a lot of different things. It's not just plainly water, right? So we have to look at that and we have to go, I'm going to choose something different. So acknowledge that there's pee in the world, like it's there. Also, let's choose something different to focus on. We're just not going to focus and try to drink that anymore. We're going to go to something else and choose something else, something that is actually good for us, actually the desirable, and is going to get us the result that we want. And so to do that, when you're in the grind, when you're over it, you have to actually go, yep, I don't want that. I'm done with it. I'm over it. That's not working for me. But then we can go back to what we actually want and what is actually going to give us what we want and the result we're looking for, and go, there is still good in the world, even though there is pee. Like there is still good regardless of this thing that we don't want to drink. So that is what I would suggest. Like that is what gets me out of this over it, is I have to just acknowledge that there's things in my life that I don't want and I don't like and that are not enjoyable. Also, I can choose something different. And I think the lie that I hear the most when we're in this place of like toxic positivity and trying to make the thing that we don't want better is we don't have time to choose something else. And that is what's stopping us. I have heard that 3 times, literally this week, twice this morning, alone, that like, we just don't have time. We don't have time to choose something better. And I'm like, that's bullshit. It takes you just as long to go pour a glass of water than it would to get some pee. Like that doesn't it doesn't work, you guys. I'm sorry. I have to go back to the analogy all the time now. Once I open the can of worms, it's just there.
Once you open the can of pee.
Yeah, it's just there. But it's just ridiculous that we consistently, and we do it, right? Like we're actually here this week, where we're just like, we actually had someone on our team say to us, wow, has it been a long day? I was like, oh, sweet Jesus. Like as much
like, am I giving long day vibes? The answer is yes.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like the end of the day. It was like 1:00, and I was like, damn it, like this is not how I want to show up as a leader. And it's those types of moments that we're like, like the reality is we just have to be honest too. Like there just comes a place where like it doesn't make it better. If we're like, no, everything's great, everything's fine, it's all good. Like nobody's believing it. I didn't feel like I was being grumpy at all, and yet we were giving long day vibes. So yeah, acknowledge it and then choose something else. Like what's the thing that like what's the small win? We did a whole podcast on this. What is a small win, or what is the truth, or what is the thing that you can actually focus on that gets you something different, that shifts you? And you can still acknowledge like the reality is you might not be able to like have all good things. You might not have wins. Like you might be waiting on things. I think what wears us down the most is the things that we can't control. So yeah. How have you dealing with pee to drink, Taylor? What has been your relationship? with that.
I don't have a great analogy like the one that you used that allows us to talk about pee for 10 minutes. So what am I going to say? Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's something I think about a lot. I've talked about this in my other podcast, which is this. I try to recognize it in real time. I find myself in these positions where I'm like, okay, I'm in this place, and it doesn't have to be negative, but for the purposes of this particular topic, like it's a frustrating time period. I'm over it. And I think some of this has to do with having enough experience, like water under the bridge, so to speak, where I'm like, okay, I know that this isn't going to this isn't a long-term feeling. I know that this is like seasonal in the sense that it might last a day or it might last an hour or something will happen tomorrow and it'll get me right. Like that's just the nature specifically with my experience with entrepreneurship, right? Is it is just like you do like there's an inevitable like roller coaster component to it, no matter what level of it you're at or where your business is at. And so I try to think about that in real time. And I think what I do try to focus on, and again, this doesn't necessarily like absolve me of feeling this way or make it better. It certainly doesn't change it instantly, but I am able to recognize that it is transient and that the only reason this is happening typically is because I'm in some process of growth, right? That like it is teaching me something. Like if I'm over it, whatever it is causing discomfort because it's not something I'm used to dealing with. And inherently, when there is something in our life that we are not accustomed to, then I think that thing typically provides like the impetus for growth, right? Because if you learn how to deal with it, if you develop the, whether it's a process or the internal mechanisms or the relationships or the communication skills or whatever you need to like deal with that thing, and then you get on the other side of it and you're no longer over it, but it's just behind you, then now you have a new skill, right? Like inherently there is an aspect of growth. And so that's actually the win that I try to focus on. It's like when this thing is over, and to your point about toxic positivity, like I don't really focus on or really even like spend a lot of energy on like how to spin this thing to make it better. But what I am focused on or trying to think about in real time is that whenever this thing passes, whenever I develop whatever it is I need to develop to get on the other side of this, I will now be more equipped. And that actually is a win, right? Like that, because I do want to grow and I do want to be better. And I'm okay with friction and frustration and challenging days if I know that they're happening to me for a reason. Right. Like I don't want to put up with bullshit for no reason. But if I know and I can trust in the fact that those things are happening and on the other side of that, I'm actually like a better, more equipped person to move through the world or to do what I want to do, that feels like a win. And I can focus on that. And there's an inherent aspect of frustration with that because it's a delayed win. Right. That's not a great, like sexy answer. That's not immediate. That doesn't mean that like, if I'm grumpy right now, that doesn't do anything for me. I just have to trust that this process is one of growth and that I can celebrate the eventual win on the other side of this thing when it comes. But it's delayed, and so I think that's a skill that has to be developed, and one that I try to recognize in real time. And I do take solace in that, like that, I don't know, things aren't immediate. Like delayed gratification is something I think that's a really important aspect of our growth. And that's not something that we more and more we're not cool with that. Right. Like everything's faster. Right. Like I'm going to order a burrito and I want it to be here in 2 minutes. right? I'm going to order, like, everything's like faster, right? And I think there are just things in our lives that we can't speed up. And that's where
Mhm.
I find myself getting most frustrated so often. Like when I have those days where I'm over it, it's because of the pace of things. And
Yeah.
and if I just, we've talked about mantras, and I think one of my mantras, I don't have it like exactly mapped out, but it is just around the, like, things things take time, right? I had somebody on my other podcast, Endurance Minded, this woman, Wendy Jones, who is great, and she had a quote that I've thought about a lot, and it really resonates here. She says, "If it's not okay right now, it means it's just not over yet."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh man, like that's like feels very freeing to me to just be like, oh, it's okay. It just means that it's still happening, and to recognize that things take time." And that this pace may not be in alignment with what you thought, but that doesn't mean that it's totally screwed up, or that it's not going to be a
Mhm.
win, or that it's a bust. It just might be taking longer. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's my mantra. Maybe I'm going to steal that from Wendy. If it's not okay right now, it's just not over yet.
Yeah, I think that's so good because we just get impatient, right? Like you're saying, like we get impatient in the process. And I think that's the thing that we've lost a lot is this like ability to stay in the grind even when it doesn't feel good, even when we like don't feel like we're winning. I was reading a report or like an article the other day. It says that Starbucks went 15 years before they made money. 15 years. I'm like, well, I would say most of us probably have a few more years to like wait it out, right? Like you and I have been there with building businesses. Like sometimes you say that a lot. I don't know where you got it from, but I like it. It's like if you're like, if you can be the one who like grinds the longest, just stays in it the longest, like essentially you can win the game. Like that puts you at the top, right? And I think you've learned that probably through like endurance sports and like all of the different places. But a lot of times it's just being the one who can like endurance the grind and the suck for long enough to see the win. And a mantra that's actually served me a lot. And this actually came from the story told earlier when I was sick was don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Like,
Mm-hmm.
miracle, aka the work pays off, whatever you want to say. But like that's something that I think I've held really true is don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
give up now, you will never know if it was going to work or not. And I think that is a really hard place to be when you're just like, can't tell you how many times I've been like, I don't have anything left. Like whether it's exercise or business or freaking parenting or being a wife, like doesn't matter the bucket. I've been like, I don't have anything left. I am like, I have nothing left. And then lo and behold, like you have another 5 reps. You have another 5 months that you were just like, and then the win happens and you forget about the pain. And I think there's something so gratifying in that. That's where confidence is built, right? Is just staying in it long enough to see it. I think another thing that's helped me is like the mantra that life is not happening to me, it's happening for me. And the hard shit in my life is actually the things that have produced the most results and created the things that I'm most proud of. And I'm so grateful for that. But in the moment when I'm over it, I'm just like, I just want to be out of pain. Like, I don't like sitting in this. I don't like waiting. I don't like any of the things that I don't like. And so I just want it to be over. And
Mm-hmm.
if I can focus on this is happening for me and for my development versus to me, which sometimes we say things like people suck and all of the, like it does in the grind of it when we're over it, it feels like it's happening to me sometimes. And that's a victim mentality, even if I don't like to say it.
Yeah.
But I truly
Yeah.
think the hard happens for us.
Yeah, I think we can't find those wins. I think we have this like I'm over it mentality. I think it often is when things feel really like stacked against us, right? Like it feels like there's so much that we just don't know where to start or what to do or like where to even find the win because there's so much. And I think about like it's very much in alignment with the like 5 minutes before the miracle is like just do one more, right? Like because there literally is like there is a point where the next thing you do is on the other side of the challenge, right? And so instead of thinking about like the million things or sorting through all the BS to find the win, like just do one thing, like do one more phone call, like read another book, like take another, like, you know, do the one thing. And there is a point where like that next thing is the inflection point and that's the win. That's the client, that's the proposal, that's the, you know, fundraising round, that's the whatever the thing is, right? It's the hire that you need that brings the energy to your team. And yeah, like that stuff can be really far away, you know? And so, yeah, there might be a lot more one things. But eventually that's the thing, right? Like, and so I just try to think about what's the one thing. And even that is a win, right? Like if I just do one more, then I'll celebrate that and I'll do it again and again.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what? One last thing before we close. You know what else is interesting is...
Are you going to plug your new product, Sweet Pea?
You guys can buy it anywhere you get pea.
Available on Amazon? I had something really poignant to say there, and I totally derailed you with a Sweet Pea joke. I apologize.
I know, I'm like, oh God, can I remember? Oh, vulnerability. Like, I think this is my last point. I think when you're in the space where you're over it, I think that so many times we're willing to bitch about what's wrong, but are we willing to be vulnerable enough to ask for help? I've been like, really trying. I got really frustrated a couple of weeks ago. We were at this group that we've been trying to be, we've been trying to go and be a part of community and like make new friends because I'm kind of a workaholic. And I like, hang out with the people I work with, and I'm totally fine with that. But my husband thinks I need friends, so we're doing that. So anyways, I were there, and like, just like everything in me was like, I don't want to be here. Like, this is not the conversation I want to be having. Like, people are just sitting around bitching about their problems, and I hate nothing more. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to change the conversation. I am going to be the disruptor of the status quo because we're just sitting here gossiping and it's stupid. And so instead of bitching about my problems or gossiping or talking about the husbands, because I don't want to do that, I was like, I need help. I was like, hey, I have a question for you guys. I need help with this. And instead of bitching about the problem, I asked for help on it. And that has been a game changer for me when I'm in the over it stage, is that instead of like commiserating, because we've talked about bourbon and bitching, like we've had those sessions where it's just got a glass of bourbon and bitch for a minute. And sometimes the bourbon and bitch session is something you need. But also, if you want to choose something a little more healthy and productive, I think asking for help, and that feels more vulnerable to me. That feels harder for me. It's like, hey, I need advice. I need help on this. Have you guys been here? Have you guys experienced this? I think if you want to shift your over it phase, get vulnerable and ask for help. I think that's the best way to get out of it. And like, invite people to come around you, not because you're pissed off and grumpy about it and bitching about it, but invite people. So that's my last words of wisdom. I'm going to go take my own advice this week.
I love it. All right. Well, as always, you can follow us, check us out on all of your favorite podcast platforms. We would love it if you would rate, subscribe, and share this episode or any of the previous 9 episodes with a friend. As all of you, I'm sure, are well aware, that is the lifeblood of podcasts. So we appreciate your early support as we get Impact Minded off the ground. If you need other resources, support, you need to reach out to us if we can help you uncover, how to get over it, how to shift that language for yourself, your team. We would love to be a resource for you. You can reach out to us at impactinitiative.network. And you can find us there along with resources to support you. And again, thanks for your early support. We'll see you next time on Impact Minded.